young girl, around 6, goes to her mom and asks, where do people come from? How did we get here? The mom goes, well, God created Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve made other people, who then made other people, and sooner or later it got to us. A few days later, same 6-year-old goes to her dad and asks him the same question. How did we get here? Dad goes, well, we evolved. Took billions of years, and first there were monkeys, and then all of a sudden there we were. 6-year-old's really confused. Goes to his mom and goes, I'm very confused. You say we come from God, and Dad says we come from monkeys. And mom goes, oh, it's very simple to explain. I was talking about my side of the family, and he was talking about his. Recuperating from the word God. Whew. Talk about an emotionally charged word. Let me tell you about my week. In this same week, I was told very emotionally that there are people who are not coming here because we use the word God. In this same week, I had people telling me that they were not coming back if I stopped using the word God. Quite a week. To use God or not to use God? Whoop, that is the question. And this charge, it sounds funny when I talk about it like that, but in this same week, in England, there was a letter sent out that looked like it came from the government to every community in England that said, this will be Punish a Muslim Day, and gave out rewards for how badly you hurt a Muslim. Emotionally charged, what we think of God, what that word brings up, and how right we are that the way we're thinking about it is right. Whoever we are, whether it be those guys. Now, the government obviously stepped up and said, no way, but somebody thought that was a good idea to do. And then there are the Muslims who want to kill all the infidels. And then there's all the Christians who have killed in the name of Christ, and even the smallest of estimates put that at about 3 million people have been killed in the name of Christ. And so people will kill for their idea of God. Whew. So when it came up here with the emotional, I know nobody was going to kill about it, though I wasn't positive. I thought it would be a good idea to explore this whole thing. Now, here's the funniest part about the word God. It's not that old. In the history of the world, the word God only came about in the 1400s. Now, the Bible's older than that. Certainly, the Torah is older than that. There's many religions older than that. But the word God was invented by the Germans in the 1400s, and it means the invoked one. So they came up with an idea that we need to invoke a being outside ourselves, and they decided to call it God. Now, because of that use of the word God, a lot of people, particularly in today's age, really flip out about that word because there is a lot of folks, I shouldn't say nobody, because there's billions who do want to believe in a God outside of ourselves. But if you want to believe in that it is in us, it is one with us, God isn't really the right word. Or is it? This really comes down to definitions. And boy, oh boy, did I start looking up definitions. Now, I found every single Bible dictionary. Every single dictionary I could find had the exact same definition, the invoked one, brought about from the German. Not one talked about the God within. Not one talked about God the way we talk about God, as being something within us. In the Jewish religion, they decided that whatever this beingness is shouldn't be named. So they call it I am that I am, because it was indescribable. Our own Dr. Holmes had this to say about, for those of you who are a little uncomfortable with the whole anointing process, last couple weeks ago, Dr. Holmes says, the inner center of our being is what is meant by the word Christ, the anointed, or the illumined. Christ means God in us. It means the divine son or daughter at the center of every person's life. If Jesus was right, there is a perfection forever established, a kingdom of God forever at hand, and a possibility of good that is available right now. Now, I checked. He made up that definition. I couldn't find anything that confirmed that that was really what was meant by the word anointed or Jesus, because when they really talked about the Christ, they talked about him being the great exception. New thought comes along, and the great new thought is that Jesus isn't the great exception, he's the great example. That is the entirety of new thought, by the way. That was the new thought. Not that Jesus didn't exist, not that we shouldn't think about him, but simply that he was a great example instead of a great exception. Now, we have in our teaching something called the 4 kingdoms of consciousness, and I'd like to walk you through those, because they have a lot to do with how we think about God. The first kingdom is called to me. This is where you're pretty much a victim to life and everything's happening to you, and you really can't seem to get a handle and you feel kind of hopeless. The next is called by me. This is where you start feeling empowered. You make a stand. You start doing things in the world to let yourself feel powerful and let yourself be known and seen, and you can create a lot of stuff from a by me consciousness, except it's exhausting because you feel very alone in it. The next is through me. Through me is that there's a God out there somewhere that if I can only tune into, only open to, will go through me, and I will follow its guidance and will get to where I want to go in life in a much easier fashion that will give me a higher quality life and make me feel better about myself. The last one is as me. As me is where we recognize that we actually are that God. Now, as me is what I preach here week in and week out, and have been told by those who choose not to come back that my teaching is very radical. And you know what? They're right. Because when I looked it up, it turns out that less than 1% of the planet even thinks of the possibility of as me. So it is radical. But 1% of 7.4 billion people is still 74 million people who have a possibility of an as-me consciousness. Now let's look at this same consciousness through the eyes of how we feel about God, okay? In a to-me consciousness, there's a God out there who maybe, if we pray hard enough, will do something for us to help out our miserable life. And then when this being doesn't, we get all pissed and never want to hear the word God again. Right? All right. By me, We take it on ourselves. We're either an atheist or an agnostic who maybe thinks there might be some power out there but really doesn't want to think about it because I'm going to make my life and I'm going to make it happen. With me so far? Through me is where the whole idea of being a child of God comes from. There's some being that's still out there, but I came out of it. It's like my dad or my mom. And somehow it's going to take care of me if I can only listen hard enough. And then there's ASME, which says, I have this Christ consciousness inside me. God is not out there, but here, and I am sourcing everything that's going on in my life, and I am going to make my life come out of this sourcing place by listening to that deeper part of myself that knows this to be true. Now, so the first question you want to ask yourself is, what God do you believe in? Which one of those four? Where are you worshiping? Because you're worshiping something. Even in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he talks about worshiping, your food, your money, your place, your shelter, your survival. God is a fascinating word. I was listening to somebody just last night, an evolutionary leader in our movement named Craig Hamilton. And he said something tremendously profound because it struck such a deep chord in myself. He said, if what you want is simply to use your spirituality for a higher quality of life, to feel good about your life, you can never get to an ASME consciousness. Because to get to an ASME consciousness is incredibly uncomfortable. And if what you're after is to feel good, the level of uncomfortability you have to go through to get to a place of really feeling and living in and being with the idea of and the beingness of an ASME consciousness, what you have to go through for that, the valley of death you have to walk through, all the things you have to deal with inside yourself is so large, you're never going to get there if all you want out of your spirituality is a higher quality of life. That you'll wind up, no matter how much you try to stretch in that direction, wind up back at through me. Wind up back in a place where what's going on for you is you're still thinking there's something out there that's going to save you if you only open up to it enough. And so you got to ask yourself, are you willing to make this walk that is so uncomfortable? And the best way to do that is to have a greater purpose in mind. I've spoken about greater purpose before. It's really important to have a really large game, larger than yourself, if you're ever going to get through the amount of uncomfortability that it takes to get to an ASME consciousness, because it's a very, very different way to be in the world than through me. Which is a very, very different way to be in the world than by me, which is a very, very different way to be in the world than to me. I mean, they're all, right, leaps each time. And the funniest part for me personally is I find that actually I wind up going through all of them all the time. I know in my bones the possibility of living in ASME, but something will happen in my world, and the first thing I'll be reacting to is from a to me place. How could that person do that to me? And then the next thing I want to do is take care of it. By me. And then, before I know it, I'm actually sitting there going, oh, God, help me. Like there's something out there. And then I got to remember, oh yeah, that's me, that's right. I got to sit here. I got to get more centered. I got to get in that place of where this is me who is sourcing this. That somehow what has just occurred that I think was done to me is an opportunity for me to then grow in that uncomfortable place that I don't really like. But since I want to be ASME, I'm going to deal with it anyway and look at the opportunity that's in this thing so that I can then move to that place I need to move to experience life from that as me place. Because even though through me is incredibly comforting, it is as me that is incredibly freeing. And so what I offer you is the opportunity to rise to a place where life can feel so free it is unbelievable. But I tell you that getting there is not so easy. Simple, but not easy. One of the things we have to face is our uncomfortability with words. Now, in this teaching, I want to be very clear, there is no such thing as semantics. Words have power. And so I'm not saying to use the word God as a semantic thing. I'm saying that somehow we have to find our way to whatever we want to call it. And I checked out the word spirit. And it turns out that is even worse than the word God for thinking of an individual and a beingness and not everything. So spirit doesn't actually work either when it comes to how it's defined every place I looked for it. There is the one mind, universal consciousness, one power. And for many of us, there's the word God. I've got, you know how I love to look up stuff. I got some interesting information for you. Here. Words that used to mean one thing and now mean something completely different. Are you ready? All right. The first one is the word nice. This word originally meant silly, foolish, and simple-minded. Very far from a compliment. Then we have the word silly. It originally meant worthy or blessed. We certainly don't think about it that way anymore. Then we have awful. That used to simply mean a state of awe. This is one of my favorites, clue. It used to mean a ball of yarn. That's come pretty far from where it started, huh? Naughty used to mean you had nothing. It meant naught. It didn't mean bad or wrong. It simply meant you didn't have anything. Flirt. Flirt initially meant opening a fan to fan yourself. Hussy. Originally meant housewife. Egregious. Originally meant distinguished or eminent. Talk about a word that's come a long way. And now, because of the internet, we have the word canoe, which we all know what that originally meant. That long, narrow boat in the water thing. Now it means a Twitter conversation that has picked up too many usernames for an actual conversation to take place. Talk about a word being used very differently. How about catfish? Now we all know what that originally meant. Now it means a person who has set up a false personal identity on social networking. How about cloud? It used to be that fluffy thing in the sky. Now it's our data and information that is somewhere up in the sky. Tweet. That used to be the sound of a bird. And lastly, viral. That used to mean you were sick as a dog. Now it means whatever you've posted is gone crazy and people love it. So words change. So getting stuck in a definition seems silly when we're creating new definitions all the time for the words we use. And how we hold that is within ourselves. We have an opportunity here to be open to the idea that all of us are moving through all stages of consciousness, that all of us are rising to ways in which we want to hold more in our lives and be more. We have an opportunity here to, every time we get stuck on a word or an idea or a phrase, to see it as an opportunity instead of something that needs changing or not used anymore because it makes you uncomfortable. If you are uncomfortable, you're on the path. Congratulations. If you're sitting and everything's going hunky-dory, you've taken a break from the path. Now, that's not bad. I highly recommend taking breaks because it can get very tiring walking this path all the time. But if there's something going on that makes you uncomfortable, take the time to take a look at it. See it as the opportunity it is. And absolutely, absolutely remember that we walk all paths, that we allow for everything here, everybody at every stage. No matter what stage of the walk you are at, you are welcome here to come in and be a part of it in any way that works for you. This is what we're here to be all-inclusive, so that we are the part that's voting for not sending out stuff like Punish a Muslim Day. We are part of giving to the area of we are not killing for Christ. We're not blowing up people in the name of Islam. What we're doing is adding love to the world, adding beauty to the world, rising above these things, rising above the average every day, because when we're upset about something, we're not going to go kill somebody about it. We're going to take a look at ourselves and go, okay, what do I have to learn from this to rise? How about that? You all up for that? Thank you. Take out what you're going to give and hold it in your hand. Unfold it, because that's what makes it powerful, is when you own this is what you're putting out to the universe. This is God too. This is power. This is energy. And when you send it out, it returns to you multiplied abundantly. So treat it that way. Treat it as a part of yourself that you are sending out. The more you give, the more you receive. That's how it goes around. Let's repeat our affirmation together. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What we give, we receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am, and so it is.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are